There are more answers than you know.
4 students found each had multiple stab wounds. Some had defensive wounds, showing they fought with the attacker. And there was no sexual assault. County Coroner Kathy Mabbutt is describing the murders as personal.
All right, everybody. Hello, good evening, and welcome back to Watch the Obsession live stream and chat. And this evening, we are talking about a case that we haven't talked about in a live stream in a while, and that is the Idaho 4 case, or what is now the case of, the state of Idaho versus Bryan Kohberger. So there have been a whole slew of defense motions recently, so we are going to talk about that. And maybe you know, or maybe you don't, but there is a new judge on the case. So the defense team, of course, is trying to file some motions that perhaps the previous judge didn't grant where they legally can. And things are definitely very interesting. When I was just looking at the documents to check out these motions and what is going on, the list of motions filed in that case is like just so long. It's insane. There's always a lot of activity in this case. So we're going to dig into all of that and talk about what we can, kind of determine about the evidence or the details of the case based on what the court filings from the defense says. So that should be pretty interesting. And I hope you guys are all ready for this. And thank you so much for waiting. I know I'm always a little bit late. I left our dinner at the grocery store. I had to turn around and go back, and it's just, oh, please let me know how the sound is. I have my mic, but I don't have the cord for my mic. I had it at work, and I left it at work, and I don't have another C charger anywhere in this house. So can you guys all hear me okay? I certainly hope that you can. So welcome to everybody who's here. Jody, Chick Tracy, Honey Bun, Lemon Lime, Angel D, great to see you. Haven't seen you in a really long time. Stefania, welcome. How are you doing? Pretty name. Let's see who else is here. Let's see. You said Chick Tracy, and thank you so much, moderators, for everything you do. Keeping eyes peeled. Welcome. How are you doing? Nice to see you. PKC. Welcome. How's it going? PKC. There's me, and I know there's some other people here. Artemis Prime. Hope you're still here. McJ. And some others. Great to see you. Thank you so much for being here. If you guys could all take a moment, please click like. That would be amazing. Try to get some notifications out to our friends so they can join in on the discussion with us. PKC and everybody else, thank you for the feedback. I appreciate that. Awesome. Okay, so my camera has a mic in it, but I don't think I've ever used it, so I'm glad that it works okay. So, oh yeah, I know what you mean. Hey, Piper Bewitch. Cool name. I just love checking out everyone's names. Welcome. How are you doing? It's great to see you. So what exactly is going on right now with these motions? Hey, Roro, how's it going? Definitely a new vibe with this judge. Yeah, definitely. Like, we really got used to Judge, right? And the way that he tended to rule on things. It's almost like after a while, because there are so many motions, you could almost, predict how he was going to rule on certain things, but it's no longer the case. Everything now is just, a really big surprise, right? So let's just take a look at what is going on with these motions. I'm going to bring something into the stream here. Present. Share screen. Oops, slides and PDFs. Hold it. I just got to save this this slide deck here. We'll call it Kohberger. Kohberger. What a name. All right. Kohberger. All right. Let's see if I can bring it in here. And if not, we'll do it another way. Google Slides. Okay. Okay, I just have to sign into my account, a different account. Hope everyone's having a great night. How are you guys all doing this week? What is it, Wednesday? I don't usually stream on Wednesdays, I feel like. So this is a little different for me. Happy to see you guys, though. All right. Whoops. We're having trouble. What? Oh, well, okay, so I'm just going to go to plan B. So I'm just going to blow these babies up here. See if we can go full screen. All right. Slideshow. Oh, wow. Damn. Okay, so I got to get out of there, and I'll share it like this. Thank you for listening to me talking to myself. Shoot. Okay, there we go. All right. Bring into the stream, baby. Welcome to everyone who's coming in. Hey, Connor Kinder, how are you doing? Nice to see you. Welcome. Hopefully this will work. Bring it big and check it out. All right, there we go. Okay, whoops, but we got to go back to the first slide. Okay, this works. We got it, guys. We got it. All right. So this is all based on a Frank's motion. So just to review some legal terminology, because things are very legal in this case right now with all these motions being filed, as it really always has been. But, you know, one of the rulings, I will give you a spoiler alert, the very last motion was to take the death penalty off the table, and the judge did rule against that. So the death penalty is still on the table, which I think is certainly appropriate. What do you guys think of that? I mean, I am certainly not a big proponent of the death penalty whatsoever, but if the death penalty is going to exist in our society, if this case doesn't warrant it, then we just absolutely need to get rid of it, because this, as y'all know, is just about as horrific and egregious as it gets, right? So this is all based on a Frank's motion. So a Frank's motion asks the court for a Frank's hearing where you can contest the truthfulness of the affidavit in support of the search warrant. And the search warrant is, of course, the basis for everything evidentiary in this case against Bryan Kohberger. Without a search warrant, the evidence, whether it is DNA or physical evidence from the apartment or Bryan Kohberger's parents' house in Pennsylvania or his car, or whatever it may be, 1122 King Road, none of that would be admissible if it weren't for a proper search warrant. And we're going to take a look at what those returns were. So obviously, the affidavit in support of the search warrant is the base of everything. So a Frank's motion in the general terms, if you're going to say that search warrant was not valid, then you've got to get rid of all the evidence. But there were 13 motions filed under this Frank's motion idea that went into specific evidentiary items that the defense wants to be suppressed. So suppressed means it's not going to be allowed in the case, right? So what are they? Number one, motion to suppress the genetic information. So again, where the Frank's motion is the basis of all of the evidentiary volume that the state has against Bryan Kohberger, the motion to suppress the genetic information would cut the state's case off, at the legs, because if it weren't for that genetic connection that was made between the single source male DNA that was found on the button snap of the knife sheath that was on Maddie Mogen's bed, partly underneath her body, partly underneath a blanket, and partly exposed, so somebody saw it without, before the bodies were moved and whatnot, then there wouldn't be a case, because it is, of course, that genetic information that was initially connected the sample to Bryan Kohberger through IgG, which you may know has always been controversial in this case and is generally controversial. If that connection were not made, then either A, none of the evidence that followed would be admissible, or there wouldn't have ever been a search warrant for it, because they wouldn't have had a basis for a search warrant. Let's search Bryan Kohberger's apartment. The judge says, why? Why? It doesn't say here in your search warrant, just because we want to. Do you have any connection between Mr. Kohberger and this crime? Just a hunch, obviously that wouldn't work. So then we go to, what I'm sure we've all heard being called the fruit of the poisonous tree issues. So these motions to suppress are really asking the judge to get rid of this evidence because it is the fruit of the poisonous tree. Because the poisonous tree, the defense asserts, is that genetic connection that was made between Bryan Kohberger and the the male DNA that was found on the knife sheath in Maddie Mogen's bedroom. So if that were obtained in an inadmissible way, then everything that follows, all of the evidence that follows, is fruit of the poisonous tree, therefore should not be allowed in court, right? So I know this is review for some of you, but welcome to my law class, even though I didn't finish law school, because I was young and dumb. Okay, so number 3, we have motion to suppress. And I think this is a very interesting one. The information that was obtained through the search warrant that was delivered to Amazon. So, the document says Bryan Kohberger, by and through his attorneys of record, submits the following memorandum in support of his contemporaneously filed motion for an order suppressing all data found by law enforcement from its search of his Amazon.com account. So what was found on that Amazon.com account, just for a refresher? Well, it was the purchase of a K-bar knife. So that obviously is very incriminating. If not for the genetic information, that's certainly the second thing that the defense wants to get it out of there. He didn't buy a K-bar knife, right? I mean, horrible for him. But it's interesting because as we're going through all of these motions to suppress, we're getting a little preview of exactly what the evidence is that the state has against Bryan Kohberger. And in my opinion, it's substantial. What do you guys think? So the fourth motion to suppress is, I didn't note it there. I'll read you what it says here in the document. It says, following the motion and memorandum in support of an order suppressing all evidence gathered by law enforcement as a result of the search of his apartment located at 1630 Northeast Valley Road in Pullman, Washington. So this is a motion to suppress all of the evidence that was found in his apartment. So I was making these nice little slides here, and then it started just taking way too long. So now I'm going to bring another. We're just going to go to the next slide. I put it all together on one slide. This lists here all of the motions to suppress that the defense filed in recent days. So I'm just going to read down through them really quick so you can just get an overview of what they are. So we have motion to suppress, the ones I already said. Then we have motion to suppress the results of the search warrant that went to Apple. The motion to suppress the evidence that was found as a result of the search warrants. Motion to suppress the results that were found from the warrant that yielded the results of the AT&T records. Then it goes into cell phone data, Google, so that's going to be his Google searches, anything he did on Google, pen trap trace device. We'll talk about that in a minute. Person in ID, Idaho, person in PA. We'll talk about that in a minute too. White Hyundai Elantra, that is, of course, Bryan Kohberger's car. And then 119 Lambsman statements redacted. So the statements that were made by Bryan Kohberger, this is what they're trying to suppress here, at his home in Pennsylvania, his parents' home in Pennsylvania, after the arrest was made. Okay, and then we're going to go into the rest in just a minute there. So let me just check out some comments here, and then we will move forth. So how's everybody doing tonight? Are you doing good? What do you think about this? Do you think this is just, kind of like same old hat for what's going on in this case, or do you think that this is something substantial? I was just reviewing like a few things that were talked about on, various networks just today, and it seems that people sort of have a split opinion of that, mostly saying that, this is just what the defense has to do because it is a death penalty case, and regardless of whether it was or not, they need to do what they can do for their client, but that's just how it goes. So this is a result of that. So let's see here. Let me grab some comments. Roro, I bet they're using Bethany in this Frank's hearing. Ha ha ha. Bethany Frank. I gotcha. Good one. Lemon Lime says defense agenda from day one is to get stuff tossed on the basis of IGG being not allowed. Absolutely. You're totally right about that. Very insightful. His attorney telegraphing that for years now. That's absolutely right. And his attorney is also telegraphing repeatedly, time and time again, various messages through these motions, since there is that super broad and super strict gag order that is still in place, and I'm sure will be through the end of the trial. So, the judge, upheld that gag order is continuing. The new judge, even though we have a new judge, that gag order still withstands. Angel says, I hate the expression fruit of the poisonous tree. Heard it too many times now. I know. It starts to be, I know what you mean. I feel ya. I agree. Let's see. Connor says, Connor Kinder, did I say that wrong earlier? I'm sorry if I did, but says, I think that Hitler is going to deny all of the suppressions. I think so too, but listen, if if his ruling is that he does not deny any, if he grants any of these suppressions, it is going to be huge. Well, depending on which item it is, of course, but it's going to be a big deal nonetheless. Angel D agrees with Connor. Connor also says there's just too much precedent already. Yes. Set on all of her arguments. I agree with you. Good call. Absolutely good call. Stefania says, I'm interested in Amazon the most. We'll take a look into all of that for sure. Angel D says, maybe the only one that might be suppressed could be the statements BK made before he was read his Miranda rights. I was just thinking that. You stole some of my thunder. I was gonna say that was a conclusion I came to as well. Great minds think alike. Yeah, I think that is possible because after all, he hadn't read his Miranda rights. I'm going to continue to read your comments, but let me just bring a video into the stream here. I think this is an appropriate point since we're just bringing that up. So this is from Law and Crime Network, I think. Let's see. I'll tell you in a second. It's Court TV or Law and Crime Network. I get them mixed up in my mind. All right, stop that. Share screen. Welcome to those of you who are coming in. Great to see you. Come on in. Please participate and chat in the discussion. We definitely want to hear your opinions. We just ask that you're respectful to the victims, their families, and each other, of course, which you guys always are. And if you're not, the mods take care of it. But we're all adults. We got it. We got it. All right. Okay, so this is Crime Fix with Anjanette Levy. So that's what we're watching here.
In Monroe County in the early morning hours of December 30th, 2022. The operation to arrest Kohberger and then the search of his home effectively shut down the neighborhood for hours. We don't know what law enforcement seized from Kohberger's parents' home, but Kohberger's lawyers argue he has standing to challenge the search, despite the fact that he doesn't own the home. There are a number of reasons why Bryan Kohberger's lawyers believe the evidence seized from the home and anything he said should be thrown out. First, Kohberger's lawyers say that
oh, good. There. I just dropped a few F-bombs. Hopefully you guys didn't hear that. Let me bring back in the stream. I don't know why it has been happening so much recently. I'm so very sorry. But let me just bring that back in the stream. We'll give it a try. All right. Oops. All right.
law enforcement violated Mr. Kohberger's Idaho and Pennsylvania constitutional rights by not knocking and announcing their presence and presenting Mr. Kohberger with the opportunity to surrender. Next, the lawyers say the affidavit submitted in support of the application for the issued search warrant recklessly or intentionally omitted material information. Kohberger's lawyers also claim all information in the affidavit was gathered because of law enforcement's unconstitutional use of investigative genetic genealogy, and thus nothing in the warrant should remain. And finally, Kohberger's lawyers say his statements after his arrest are fruit of the poisonous tree from his illegal arrest and should be suppressed as a Miranda violation. Now, I told you at the time that Kohberger was taken to the Pennsylvania police barracks and initially agreed to talk to detectives, but then he asked for a lawyer. His public defender at the time in Monroe County told me that following the arrest. There were reports at the time as well that when police entered Kohberger's parents' home, that he asked, "Have you arrested anyone else?" I've not been able to confirm that information, but that was reported at the time. This is what Kohberger's lawyers write about the arrest. On December 30th, 2022 at 1:14 a.m. Eastern Daylight Time, Pennsylvania SWAT raided Mr. Kohberger's parents' home. During the raid, law enforcement broke the front door of the home, shattered the sliding glass door of the basement, held the entire family at gunpoint, and seized Mr. Kohberger. Mr. Kohberger made statements to his arresting officers. He was transported to a police station in Stroudsburg, Pennsylvania, and made statements during transport. At the station, Mr. Kohberger was processed, during which police collected information about his person. Finally, during interrogation, before requesting an attorney, Mr. Kohberger made statements to interrogators from the Idaho State Police and the Moscow Police Department. Around the same time, police in Pullman, Washington searched Bryan Kohberger's apartment, and Kohberger's attorneys want all of the evidence seized from his home suppressed as well. We know that Kohberger's lawyers have said no DNA from the victims was found there or in his car, but computers and other items were seized, and Kohberger's lawyers say the search of his apartment also violated his rights because of the original investigative genetic genealogy work conducted in the case by the FBI. All information in the affidavit was gathered because of law enforcement's unconstitutional use of investigative genetic genealogy, and thus nothing in the warrant should remain. They also write, it is not that the results of the IGG sped up the investigation. Instead, they focused the investigation on Mr. Kohberger, a person whose only connection to the case was his mode of transportation and the shape of his eyebrows, two identifications of little to no value. Without IGG, there is no case, no request for his.
Those eyebrows, I've got to say, have gotten a whole lot of press. For some surly looking eyebrows, they have gotten a lot of attention.
Phone records, surveillance of his parents' home, no DNA taken from his driveway in a gated community subject to a refuse removal ordinance. Kohberger also wants the judge to throw out the information law enforcement gathered from a warrant for his Amazon account. The motion says the timeframe March 20th, 2022 through March 30th, 2022, and November 1st, 2022 through December 6th, 2022 were selected. Kohberger is also asking that 3 searches of his Google account be suppressed. His lawyer says the warrant lacked probable cause. Kohberger also wants the search of his cell phone and a 2 terabyte USB drive suppressed. They're also asking to throw out the pen, trap, and trace warrant of Kohberger's cell phone, which allowed law enforcement to track his location. Kohberger also wants all evidence found in the search of his Hyundai Elantra thrown out, along with the searches of his person in Pennsylvania and Idaho, along with a warrant for AT&T. And finally, the defense wants a Franks hearing. That's a special hearing to determine whether police lied in an affidavit in an effort to get a search warrant. I want to bring in Philip Dubé. He works as court-appointed counsel in Los Angeles County in California.
Okay, I just want to hear a little bit more here, and then I'm going to open up panel if anybody wants to come up and discuss. I have more material for you, but I think, as Stefania just said, I think that, these 13 motions to suppress, and we'll just review them again all together, tells us so much about the evidence that the state has, the evidence that the that the defense deems most important. And I think that we can, for the items, in which we do not know the results, like say for certain, like the Amazon or the Google, whereas we know for certain the search warrant to return results for his apartment and his house. For ones where there's some ambiguity as far as the public is concerned because of the gag order, I think it definitely gives us some not definite information about the details of the evidence, but some almost definite information, in my opinion.
California, not affiliated with this case at all. Philip, your thoughts, first of all, on the request by the defense in this case to suppress Bryan Kohberger's genetic information. To me, that has always been one of the major things in this case was the use of genetic genealogy. And we knew, because this is being used in an active case and not a cold case, it was more of like a hot case, that the defense was always going to fight back against this genetic genealogy being used to identify him as a suspect.
Well, I got to tell you, it's a pretty novel approach, and I got to give kudos to defense counsel because it's actually brilliant. She's doing whatever she can to protect her client in a death case. Having said that, I'm not sure that her client has standing under the law. In order to challenge any type of search or seizure under the Fourth Amendment to our Constitution, a defendant has to have legal standing. And what does that mean? It means that he has to have a legitimate expectation of privacy in the item or the place that's being searched and seized. And if the data in this particular case is the type of data that was voluntarily submitted to a virtual public database for millions of people to access and look at and download and analyze, then you don't really have an objective, reasonable expectation of privacy. The United States Supreme Court revolutionized this notion of privacy interests back in the 60s in a case called Katz versus United States. And what the court said is, look, the old standard that we used to use in deciding whether or not a search was valid is whether or not you had a possessory interest in the place or the thing that's being searched or seized.
Okay, so this is getting a little boring. So obviously, I mean, they're kind of stating the obvious here, you know, that we've already determined here ourselves that the crux of the entire suppression motions is that IgG, the use of IgG, and determining that genetic connection between suspect number 1 and Bryan Kohberger, which of course eventually led to the the search, or I'm sorry, yeah, the warrant that, well, for his arrest ultimately, and that allowed law enforcement to take that buccal sample from the inside of Bryan Kohberger's mouth that made that definite connection between him and suspect sample number 1. So we already knew that, right? Now, in regards to, and we're going to talk about person, the motion to suppress the person and ID and the person MPA in just a moment, because I know a lot of you are very interested in it. It really is, I think, the most interesting kind of part of these motions to discuss, at least. Now, come on, people. I gave you the linked panel. Come on up. Tell us what you think. Join in the conversation, y'all. I just want to play you a little bit of a video I made a while back that had to do with the IgG information and witness intimidation. I don't know if you guys all know about this or remember this. So let's just take a little trip back to what has already happened when the defense filed under Judge a motion to seal. Well, a motion to seal and then suppress, or suppress and seal, actually it was. So here we go. I'm going to bring that in right now. Come on, StreamYard, baby. Better work for me. Oops. All right. Oops. I'll share that. Then I'll click in, and I think we're good. Get through what we've already said.
Real issues of justice in this case that need to be discussed and or exposed. In a recent pretrial hearing that covered a number of topics, we heard Judge ask this to Bryan Kohberger's defense attorney. Are you ready?
So we're going to have a pretrial discussion. Whose rights would be violated there? Mr. Kohberger's rights.
Whoa. Wait a second. I think we need to hear that again.
Believe that.
So we're going to have a pretrial discussion. Whose rights would be violated there? Mr. Kohberger's rights.
Yes, that's right, y'all. The seated judge for this trial asked, well, whose rights would be violated here? And the defense attorney responded, Mr. Kohberger's rights. And now the context for this conversation in the hearing was Bryan Kohberger's defense attorney was explaining why they wanted all of the information that pertained to the genetic genealogy investigation that led the FBI agents to build out the family trees that eventually supposedly led them to Bryan Kohberger's father, which supposedly helped to lead them to Bryan Kohberger, which was one of the cornerstones for eventually getting a warrant for his arrest. Now, the investigative genealogy bit was not included in the probable cause affidavit because even the founder of genetic genealogy, C.C. Moore, says that it should not be used as evidence on its own. It should not be used as the foundation for obtaining a warrant. Basically, she says that genetic genealogy provides leads to law enforcement that help them to obtain the suspect when law enforcement is tasked with solving horrific crimes like this. However, the question of the validity of how law enforcement used genetic genealogy to finally find Bryan Kohberger's father as a match to the DNA that was found on the knife sheath snap, that single source male DNA, that whole process is very important because it is unclear if without that DNA, law enforcement could have actually arrested Bryan Kohberger. And although we now know that after law enforcement took the buccal swab and got Bryan Kohberger's DNA straight from the inside of his cheek and used a tried and true method of evaluating that DNA, and they came up with that crazy statistic, the 5.37 octillion chance that it is more likely Bryan Kohberger's touch DNA that was found on the knife sheath snap than anybody else in the world, it is still important to understand what happened in that process that led them to, in part, arrest Bryan Kohberger, because it is a matter of justice and a man's life is on the line here in this trial. And matters of justice should matter to us all, because when they don't, guys, we've got a real problem. In addition to Judge being confused about whose rights may be violated if things go down in a certain way,
Having a free trial this case, whose rights would be violated there? Mr. Kohberger's rights.
it appears we might have another problem. Gabriela Vargas was clearly a reluctant witness for the defense in the preliminary trial hearings that went down sometime last week. Gabriela Vargas is a investigative genetic genealogist who has worked with law enforcement and has worked with a couple other legitimate companies. I thoroughly researched them. And the story of her work has been told on 48 Hours and other mainstream media news sources, and her work is actually pretty well documented and has started a company of her own. And she does the same kind of thing that Cece Moore does in building out these profiles to work the genetic genealogy process to provide law enforcement solid leads when they are looking for suspects, sometimes in fresh cases, sometimes in cold cases, who committed usually horrible crimes, when they're looking at matters of DNA and finding a suspect in that manner. In the latter part of Gabriela Vargas's testimony, it became clear why she was clearly a reluctant witness on that stand, as she began to talk about her experience in working this process and working with law enforcement and the backhanded ways that law enforcement and other people in her profession, in her field, which is, of course, a budding field that has very little regulation at this time, would use backdoor or back-ended ways of finding a suspect, or perhaps finding the suspect that they want to find.
Now, her testimony, guys, is so important. I see you back there. I'm going to bring you up in just a minute here. Thank you for coming up. Her testimony is so important because in her testimony, she, in a sense, makes a case both for using genetic genealogy, which is her thing, and she's, again, very well respected in that field, and also against it. But there's also an issue of her being intimidated by the FBI. I don't know if you guys remember that or not, but this portion here that's coming up of her testimony at the time is really just so critical to this whole issue of genetic genealogy, and if that methodology should be allowed, if the ultimate DNA sample should be allowed into court, if part of the process was determining who the suspect is through genetic genealogy. But again, there is lots of precedents, well, not lots, there is precedents, substantial precedents would be the right word, for IgG being admissible in court, or using IgG as a path to connecting a suspect to a sample.
Her testimony was stunning and controversial, and I'm going to play you a little bit of it in this video here so you can hear what she had to say from her own mouth, in her own words, because I certainly can't do it justice. But what is more stunning than her testimony itself is that after her testimony, that very same evening, 2 FBI agents paid her a visit to her home, to her residence. And again, this was after her testimony that implied and at times clearly stated that law enforcement uses not so ethical means to build out these profiles to find the suspect, or perhaps the suspect that they want to find. Guys, this is alarming, and I can't understand why more people aren't making a big deal about this. I don't know if this would be a matter of witness tampering. We don't have all the details, but in my mind, if it is not, it certainly must come close. And should we allow that to be acceptable?
Does law enforcement have access to all of them?
If properly uploaded, there's a fee that you must pay. You must upload through a separate database than the one in which consumers upload through. You must pay the fee, and you, depending on the case, may be limited on the matches that you are able to see. The terms of service have changed several times since the Golden State Killer case came out, and which investigative genetic genealogy became very popular. It used to have everyone opted in, then GEDmatch opted everybody out, and you had to choose to opt in to law enforcement match as a consumer. Then it decided to automatically opt Doe cases in. So to break that down, if you were to take a DNA test in Ancestry and want to upload to GEDmatch, when you input that file, it's going to ask you, do you consent to law enforcement matching? And if you hit no, and I am working violent crime non-Doe case, I should not be able to see that you are a match to my unknown DNA contributor.
You said should not.
Should not.
Does it happen anyway?
It does. It has.
And is that because there's a problem with GEDmatch? It's just fluke, you upload it and all of a sudden these things that shouldn't happen did?
There there are a lot of tools that are available in GEDmatch. These tools allow you to make comparisons of two or more people and how they relate to each other and share DNA. One of these tools allows you to compare many matches, not only against your DNA profile that you're working, but also against all of their matches to see if their matches match each other. When you utilize this tool, there is a feature that you can edit the list of kits that are originally selected.
What does that mean? Edit the list of kits?
So when you upload your profile, it takes about 24, 48, 72 hours max to batch and tokenize in the system. It then produces a list of matches, okay? And these matches are biological relatives to the unknown DNA contributor.
Okay, you know what? I'm gonna just like stop this and paraphrase it, because by now I'm pretty well versed in what it is she has to say. So she just goes on to explain the legitimacy of what it is that she does. I'm gonna bring you up. Oh, Justice A through Z, R, come back up. I'm bringing you up in a second, girl. Get back up here. The validity of what it is that she does, and she also talks about how, although the issue here was that certain people opt out when they sign up for a certain service, like, what is it, like 23andMe or something. They can opt out of being in that genetic database, but it doesn't necessarily mean that their information doesn't end up in that database. And there is a loophole that law enforcement can use to still obtain that genetic information for people that actually opted out. So in that case, that obtaining of that genetic material and information to make the connection between a sample and an actual person is absolutely illegal and should be absolutely positively inadmissible. However, that is not the case. Why is that not a case? Because it is a law enforcement secret. So it's not that the judge, rules that, this person's genetic material and, the information that the genetic material tells us was obtained illegally by law enforcement because they opted out, but I'm going to let that evidence come into the case. No, it's because law enforcement does that in a backdoor, underhanded way, and nobody knows about it past that. I mean, maybe judges know about it. We certainly don't know that. I haven't been judged for one of those cases. I wouldn't know, but that is the case that she's making. So I'm going to go ahead and bring up Justice A through Z, and I hope that R comes back up because I would love to hear from you. So, hey, Justice A through Z, how's it going?
It's going. How's my mic?
It's good. Good. I can hear you great.
It's a new mic. It's like all professional and stuff.
Ooh, nice.
The cat ate my little old one.
Oh God, I know. I've had that with Bunny. So
Exactly.
What do you think about what we're talking about here?
Oh, it's scary. It's really scary with the genetic material. I've always wanted to do the 23andMe, but I won't do it just because of that type of thing. Not that I'm going to be committing any crimes, but now with mass deportations that we're looking at, I am scared to death for people.
Well, also in the fact of the issue that Gabriela Vargas is talking about right there, where, even if you opt out to have your genetic material go past, just the hands of like a private company like 23andMe, and you opt out of that larger database from which law enforcement draws their pool of genetic samples, but you still end up in there, I'm just really uncomfortable with that. Hey, R, how are you doing? How's it going? Nice to see you.
I'm well. Thank you for asking. How are you all?
I'm good. So you said you haven't been keeping up on this case lately, but there hasn't been too terribly much to keep up with, other than the fact that there's a new judge on the case. There are, so there's, of course, a whole slew of motions to suppress where before the defense failed with motions to seal or suppress or things like that. And, we're on to this issue of these 13 motions to suppress various things. All of the Frank's motions. And the base of that, the crux of that is trying to get rid of the genetic information, because if that is not allowed in court, then everything thereafter is fruit of the poisonous tree and it's got to go.
Yeah. Okay. So then I'm kind of like up to date then, because everything that I've been listening so far is just about the legitimacy or like how admissible is this information. The whole 23andMe thing and the DNA stuff, you're like willingly giving whatever sector of our government your fingerprints and your DNA. You're just giving them more information, right? Our information now is being sold through Facebook, through ads, through your phone. I mean, we are more valuable than ourselves. We are valuable because of our information.
Yeah.
And so now, aside from our interests and what we like and don't like and thumbs down, our social media, now we're giving them DNA. So it's just become this new sector of profitability when it comes to human beings, right? Yeah. So I think it would be, I'm not, and not to judge anyone that has done this, but to send your blood off to a company and you could say, yes, I read the terms of service, but you didn't actually read all 30 pages of the fine print, which means that your data can be sold here, and here. So you sell your blood or whatever, you send your blood, and then that information of where you came from or your genealogy, whatever, now you're going to have ads. People will be buying this information from you or of you. And now they're going to be specifically sending you ads, sending specific things to you. Now they know more information about you, right? Yeah. So that's just my take on that. But with this whole DNA stuff, then if they can throw out this DNA, then what do they have on Bryan Kohberger then?
Legally they can have nothing, because everything the entire probable cause affidavit and the search warrants that branch from that were a direct result of that DNA match. So, theoretic or, in reality, is there more? I personally, yes, think that there is a lot more, but, that maybe or maybe not hold a discussion, but legally, no, nothing else can even exist.
That's what it sounds like to me. And then so why would Bryan Kohberger waive his right to a speedy trial? Because remember I told you a long time ago, it was like this is almost like a huge experiment to him. This is literally what he studies. This is going to be his major. And so waive my right to a speedy trial. And then how long are we going to talk about this DNA 23andMe stuff? How many years are we going to be stuck in court?
He waived his right to a speedy trial because, if he had a speedy trial, the defense would not have had the opportunity to file all of this mass volume of motions, and this is my opinion, and selectively leak out and telegram, as somebody else said in chat earlier, information that they want to about, what they want the public or the potential jury pool to know that would not otherwise be known because of that gag order. So in that sense, to me, it makes perfect sense that he'd waive his right to a speedy trial.
I agree with you. This is all on purpose, essentially.
Yeah. The other thing I'd like to add, and hey, Ara, nice to see you.
Hey, Miss Justice.
The other thing I want to add before I forget is the thing with the DNA, the 23andMe, and not to be disparaging towards anyone who's done it. I almost did it, but
me too.
To add insult to injury, it's like you're paying them a couple $100 to give them your DNA to do whatever the F they want with it. Mm-hmm. They should be paying you a heck of a lot more than that. I mean, it's crazy.
Yeah.
It's
really, absolutely.
Really crazy.
Yes, they sure should. Now, listen, I'm going to bring some of the documents that people were most interested about into the stream. So the one that we're going to look at first is, let's see, this is the right one. The motion to suppress. Okay, so it's called Motion to Suppress Memorandum in Support of Person in ID. Okay, so let me just read it. People are like, what is that? Okay. So I'm just going to start reading it. I'm getting an echo. Can you guys mute for a moment?
Yeah.
Just while I'm reading this. Thank you, guys. I don't have my mic, so it might be my fault, but thank you so much. It's better. Okay. So it says, Bryan Kohberger. Oh, let me bring this into the stream. Do you guys want to look at this? Yeah, I may as well. All right. So share screen. Some people like to read along. Read along, y'all. All right. So if I'm going to do that, I'm going to make it bigger. Woo. That's like, okay, fine. So Bryan Kohberger, through his attorney of record hereby, submits the following memorandum in support of his contemporaneously filed motion for an order suppressing all evidence gathered by law enforcement as a result of the search of Mr. Kohberger's person in the Latah County Jail. Issues. The affidavit submitted in support of the application for the issued search warrant recklessly or intentionally omitted material information. The affidavit submitted in support of the application for the issued search warrant included information that must be excised. A. All information in the affidavit was gathered because of law enforcement's unconstitutional use, this is the crux of the whole argument, investigative genetic genealogy, or IgG, and thus nothing in the warrant should remain. Information gathered about Mr. Kohberger via previously invalid warrants must also be excised. Facts. Due to the haphazard way in which law enforcement has kept and disclosed records in this matter, the following is the facts as best the defense can tell. This is really important stuff here. Whether or not it's, it makes evidence admissible or not is up to the judge. Nevertheless, it's important information. On December 28, 2022, Trooper Leary of Pennsylvania State Police became aware of the objective of arresting Mr. Kohberger from the Moscow Police, Corporal Payne. So December 28th. On December 29th, 2022, at 4:44 Eastern, the magistrate in Pennsylvania issued a search warrant for Bryan Kohberger's parents' residence. Okay, same day. A couple hours earlier, on December 29th, 2022, the magistrate in this matter signed an arrest warrant for Kohberger in Latah County. The affidavit for the warrant was signed by Moscow Police Detective Payne. So look, guys, I'm assuming this is accurate, okay? It's in this legal filing for this major case that is being heavily scrutinized. So understand this. I'm going to just paraphrase that again. On December 29th at 4:44 p.m., The judge in Pennsylvania issued the search warrant for the parents' residence in Pennsylvania 2 hours and 22 minutes earlier on December 29th. The judge signed an arrest warrant for Bryan Kohberger. The affidavit for the warrant was signed by the Moscow Police Department Detective Payne, who I raised an eyebrow at. So what that means is critical. It means that in Latah County, the judge signed his arrest warrant, yet you can go arrest him based solely on, well, not necessarily. Well, not necessarily. I might be misspeaking.
Are you saying that he signed it because someone told him, "Hey, we're going to come to you with this, so can you just okay it?"
Well, let me read a few more details. So we're going to answer that question together because it's a little ambiguous. So
can I hop in for a second?
Sure.
Are you guys familiar with the purchase of the house directly across the street from the Kohberger parents' house?
Yeah, I've heard about that. Yeah.
That was literally purchased by Susan Payne and a few other people. Was it purchased November 13th and then sold 4 months later at a?
I'm not sure. I don't remember the details.
I have all the details somewhere, but yeah, it was like a $4,000 loss, and they flipped it in 4 months, except they flipped it backwards.
Susan Payne is Brett Payne's wife?
Susan Payne, it was like 71 at the time.
Okay.
And I wasn't able to track if she was an aunt or a grandmother. I was looking into Brett Payne a lot, and his father is a convicted felon in Alaska. His father is also Brett Payne. They have different middle initials. BM and BJ, I think. It's pretty bad.
Yeah, I know. I would never give my child the initials BJ.
Or BM.
Right, I know, right?
Anyway, I think it's important to consider that because, the way they tried to portray the neighborhood initially was that these houses were extremely spread out, that when they claimed that Kohberger was going through someone's garbage, that he would have basically had to travel like a quarter mile to get to the neighbor. It's not, the lots aren't that big. I doubt they're even a whole acre. They're more like a half of an acre or quarter acre. And the house directly across the street looks directly at the Kohberger's house. I mean, I've done so many studies on the maps and with the realty places. Beautiful house, absolutely beautiful house. I mean, it's a fabulous neighborhood. The Kohberger's house was decent, but not like real nice. But the one across the street that was purchased for around $450,000 was just mint condition, like a little micro mansion almost. Anyway, keep going. I just wanted to put that.
No, that's okay. No, that's fine. I'm actually bringing a picture of the neighborhood in right now so people can see what it is.
Yeah. What was the street, like Lamont or something like that?
Yeah, Lamont. Yeah.
And yeah, if you look, I mean, just with the real estate pictures, that's all I had was like real estate pictures and Google Maps, just the regular stuff that you find on the internet. But I found pictures from inside the house looking directly at Kohberger's house.
Yeah, no, I mean, so what she's saying is that and I honestly don't think that there's anything to it. I mean, I'll just be honest about that. But
sure.
There is something to do with the person who somebody bought a house across the street from Bryan Kohberger's house. Hold it just one second. And their last name was Payne, and obviously that is the last name of Brett Payne, the corporal who authored the probable cause affidavit that led to the arrest of Bryan Kohberger. So, does that mean anything? I don't know.
And that the purchase date was November 13th of 2022.
Right. But yeah, and that it was, okay, so it was the same day as the murders happened. So, to me, honestly, that goes way into the realm of conspiracy theory. Brett Payne was setting up, the purchase of this house across from Bryan Kohberger's parents on the very same day, just hours later. after they were murdered, but I don't think it was really the purchase date was really November 13th because that's a Sunday, but maybe
right. It was either the day before or the day after.
Yeah. So so that is a thing, but so that's what she's talking about there. So, and again, so here's a picture. The house in the middle is Bryan Kohberger's parents' house, and you can see where the neighbors are. So they're not like a quarter mile away from one another. That is what the neighborhood looks like. They're a couple to 150 to a couple hundred yards away from each other, it appears to me. So that's what it looks like is what's going on there. So here, let me get back to finishing reading this so we can discuss this too. But thank you for adding that. I know it's a thing, and we can talk about it more. I just want to get through this one doc here. Let's see. It's a thing. It is the thing people talk about. Okay, so we have again, and December 29th at 4:44. The judge and PA signed the search warrant for Kohberger's house 2 hours earlier and some change at 2:22 p.m. across the country in Latah County, Idaho. We had the judge in Latah County sign the arrest warrant. Interesting timing, perhaps. So what does that mean? What that means, I think what they're saying is that the sample of, there's the issue of the sample of DNA that apparently was from the father being obtained illegally, but then there is case precedence. It says once you throw something in the garbage, you are abandoning that property and it's free game. So that's going to come into play here a bit too. So now at 2:43 p.m., 1 minute before that arrest warrant was signed for Kohberger in Latah County, a criminal complaint and more probable cause order were filed in this matter. At 10 p.m., in Pennsylvania, which would be 7 p.m. in Idaho, SWAT began preparations to arrest Bryan Kohberger. Despite days of constant FBI surveillance, Pennsylvania law enforcement did their own surveillance starting at 11:15 p.m., which would be 8:15 Pacific time. And despite the fact that the days of constant FBI surveillance showed Mr. Kohberger was unarmed, intended to go for runs around his parents' neighborhood, police decided attacking, which is not a legal term, but okay, Mr. Kohberger's within his parents' home was the best option. I mean, I think that I thought it was really interesting that that statement is an illegal filing because the police decided that attacking Mr. Kohberger's within his parents' home was the best option. That is highly subjective and okay, but fine. There it is. There we got that. Okay. So on December 30th, 2022, my birthday, at 1:14 a.m., Pennsylvania SWAT and federal agents raided Mr. Kohberger's parents' home. Mr. Kohberger was arrested. At 4 a.m., a few hours later on December 30th, Pennsylvania State Police filed a criminal complaint against Kohberger. On January 4th, Kohberger was flown to Latah County. On the 5th, Sergeant Blaker requested a search warrant for Mr. Kohberger's person, relying upon the same facts articulated above for the warrants used in Pennsylvania. Later that day, Mr. Kohberger's person was searched. Pictures of his body, his fingerprints, and his DNA were taken. A member of the Idaho and federal law enforcement by the Latah County and federal law enforcement at the Latah County Jail. Here's the argument. The affidavit submitted in support of the application for the issued search warrant recklessly or intentionally omitted material information. And this is what they say about it. The Fourth Amendment states unambiguously that no warrant shall issue but upon probable cause supported by oath of affirmation, and particularly describing the place to be searched and the persons or things to be seized. Probable cause exists when the given circumstances are set. The next, and there's some redactions in this, by the way, set forth in the affidavit. There is a fair probability that contraband or evidence of the crime will be found in a particular place. They italicize in a particular place. So that's going to be a point of contention. For a search warrant to be valid, the judge issuing the warrant must rely on the affidavit or affidavit sworn before the judge or by testimony under oath and recorded that establish the grounds for issuing the warrant. And then there's the precedence citation. Any discrepancy between the item for which there was probable cause and their description in the search warrant requires suppression. So she's making her argument step by step here. It is clear that the issuing magistrate himself, if he is to fill his constitutionally mandated function of interposing an independent intelligence between law enforcement and citicism, so If the judge is responsible for making sure the law is enacted properly for the protection of us and for the safety of us, must actually and in fact draw the inferences from the evidence presented to him. And then again, there's precedent citation. It is for this reason that courts have insisted that the full facts from which interference might be drawn and information necessary to determine their reliability be placed before the judge. The challenge pursuant to this section of the motion is separately laid out in Kohberger's motion for hearing First Frank's motion. So number 2, the affidavit submitted in support of the application for the issued search warrant included information that must be excised. Where information in the warrant was obtained through violation of the Constitution, the Idaho court excised that information. And then the citation. So that's pretty straightforward. All information in the affidavit was gathered because of law enforcement's unconstitutional use of IgG or investigative genetic genealogy, and thus nothing in the warrant should remain. Angel D, girl, fruit of the poisonous tree. I know. Mr. Kohberger has argued in a separate motion that genetic genealogy investigation in this matter was done in violation of the Constitution. Additionally, he argued that there would be no investigation into him without that original constitutional violation. It is not that the results of the IgG sped up the investigation. Instead, they focused the investigation on Mr. Kohberger. So they're saying that no, investigative genetic genealogy was not used as a tip like C.C. Moore says it should be. Instead, it caused law enforcement to zone in, laser focus, eyes only on him. A person whose only connection to the case was his mode of transportation and the shape of his eyebrows. Very snarky. 2 identifications of little to no value, as previously argued. So we're saying the shape of his eyebrows and his very generic car. What's up with that? That means nothing. As the Idaho Supreme Court explained, while the initial burden in showing factual connection between the illegality and the evidence, the state needs to show it would have been discovered anyway. So what they're saying is if it were not for this connection between suspect sample A, the DNA that was found on the knife sheath, and Bryan Kohberger, that any evidence that should be admitted would have been discovered anyway, even without the genetic connection. And we're going to talk about that because they actually wrapped that point up earlier in the document. Without IgG, there is no case, no request for his phone records, surveillance of his parents' home, no DNA taken from the garbage out front. Because the IgG analysis is the origin of this matter, everything in the affidavit should be excised. And the last one, we're almost done here. Information gathered about Mr. Kohberger via previous invalid warrants also must be excised. Separately, the information gathered via the various other warrants should be excised for the reasons set out in those warrants. So the grand conclusion here is that Mr. Kohberger requests that the court suppress all evidence obtained by the police from the warrant permitted to search his person, this specific one. As explained above, the warrant lacked probable cause as written, given its heavy reliance on conclusions reached by law enforcement without the details necessary for the judge to draw his own conclusions. And because the warrant omitted exculpatory information and information that put into question the reliability of the facts, in which it relies, and finally, because the affidavit relied on evidence gained in violation of the Constitution, all in violation of the 4th Amendment. So this is the ultimate fruit of the poisonous tree argument. And I think really, to me, we have to remember that there is that precedence for saying that once you throw something out, your property out in the trash, you have legally abandoned it. So going through a person's trash is fair game. There is ample legal precedence for it. But I think, something that still nevertheless seems a little bothersome to me is that timing of the search warrant being signed. And listen, y'all may know, I personally at this point, and I'm willing to sway if evidence points me there, but at this time, given the evidence that I am aware of, which obviously is not all of it, I do believe Bryan Kohberger is guilty. Nevertheless, it bothers me here that on December 29th at 4:44, the Pennsylvania judge signed the search warrant for the home. And it was 2 hours earlier when in Latah County, there was already an arrest warrant signed. To me, that seems a little problematic. Oh my gosh, I was not showing the document that whole time. Seriously. And where'd my girls go? What happened?
I think you just full screened yourself.
Oh my God, I didn't mean to do that.
We don't mind.
I don't want
I'm
myself.
still here too. I know. I was wondering where
We're
Ara
here.
was.
We're chilling.
I could see me, but not Ara.
Oh
So I was
my
like,
God, I meant
I was
to
like,
show you
oh,
the
Ara
document
went
this
somewhere.
time. Ah! Oh well. Anyway, hopefully you could. Those of you that like to read along, I'm really
Yes.
sorry about that. So, could you guys still follow even though you weren't able to read along?
Oh yeah. You're explaining things
Totally.
very well.
So, what
Totally.
do you think? I'm throwing it to you.
No problem. It was like story time.
Yeah, yeah, right. So, what do you guys think about all that?
You make some really good points.
Points, Miss Kelly. Some really good points.
So then if they dismiss the DNA stuff, then anything that they gathered after the DNA stuff is inadmissible. So you have no case.
Yeah, that's exactly what that's saying because, the one thing that they said here about that is hold on, let me see if I can find it. Is that basically if the DNA were thrown out and they're saying that the DNA is garbage, then any evidence
Quite
that
literally,
could,
it's
yeah,
garbage.
right, exactly. Any evidence that would be able to be admitted would have to have been
Previously obtained.
not
Or by
necessarily previously.
another way, like
Oh
another
no,
way.
this is exactly what it says. So I think it says, as the Idaho Supreme Court explained, while the initial burden is in showing the factual connection between illegality and the evidence, the state must show that that evidence would have been discovered anyway, even if it were not for the DNA.
Oh,
And that would be a
well,
hard case to make. And it
yeah,
says the
like
state cannot make this showing.
how do you hone in on BK without that DNA evidence, right? I mean, also
Yeah.
my question is, Kelly,
Well,
maybe you can answer this. Okay, so they got the DNA from the trash. They knew to hone in on BK and the house. How did they get to that point? Because that was such a long time ago. How did
say,
they know to look in that trash?
well, because of, there was a few things. So now listen, here's another big piece of it. So this is like a really kind of complex, thing that we're talking about here with these 13 motions to file being suppressed because there was the IgG connection that was made from Gabriela Vargas in her work and suspect sample A. But also separate from that connection with the DNA between suspect sample A and Bryan Kohberger, there were other things that were laid out in the PCA, like the information with, like Bryan Kohberger's car. They had seen that white Hyundai Elantra around, and then, they
Yeah, but
narrowed
not the
down
license plate. And not the license plate.
Well, I would have to, to get like the very specifics details to answer your question properly, we'd have to read from the PCA because it is kind of a complex connection that they make. But I believe that the way that it is described to us by law enforcement, at least, this is all I can say because that's all I have to go on. I do think that there were legitimate connections that were made to Bryan Kohberger aside from the IgG connection. However, that clearly is the strongest connection they have, for sure.
Yeah, and I only asked because I know you've been doing that research since the very beginning, and I vaguely remember how it got to that trash specifically. But then after that, okay, and thank you for answering the best that you could. So then after they got into the trash and they identified the DNA and they got to Bryan Kohberger, like the FBI that or whatever agency did this testing or requested the testing, like how did they know to specifically request it from this service? How did they know? Or they were just taking it by chance, like let's send this DNA out to this company and this company and this company. Were they just randomly sending out requests
No.
to all?
So what? Okay, so the way they got to that was that somebody in Bryan Kohberger's family, some people in chat here were saying that people postulated was the sister, submitted their DNA to one of those companies. So somehow DNA from that company ended up being part of that like national or that database with people that opt in, or more accurately, maybe don't.
You're echoing,
out.
Miss Kelly. I'm sorry, you're
I know.
echoing.
Yeah, it's when I don't know. I can't do it. It's. Could you guys mute while I'm talking then? Because then I think it stops.
I'm muted.
Okay. All right. Cool. Yeah. There we go. Okay. All good now. I think it's both of us on together. Ours when it happens. When you're talking, I'll mute. Oh no, I can't though, because I don't know what I'll do. So somehow somebody in Bryan Kohberger's family, but we don't know exactly who, submitted their DNA to one of those companies and ended up being in that larger database that law enforcement can utilize. Okay. So that's what Gabriela Vargas was talking about on the stand. I stopped playing it because the audio was just so bad, just because of the court recording. So that's where she comes in, and she does her investigative genetic genealogy thing, where, the whole process, I can't really explain it, where they like start, narrowing down certain, people based on demographics, area, origin, race, all these different things. And incredibly, somehow they can like narrow down to a specific person. And I know, I do believe this absolutely to be true. I mean, the way that Cece Moore describes it is like, it's great. I just can't describe it myself because I'm not somebody who does that.
Okay, so basically, I apologize. This company is available to law enforcement then at any level.
Well, right. Well, yeah, but it's not a company. But here, let me get the search warrant up, and I'll tell you exactly. I just can't remember the proper word for it.
That's what I'm curious about. Yeah.
I want to point out too that they had already sent the DNA to the Idaho lab and found nothing, and then they sent it off to that Texas lab. And I find that very suspicious, especially when
What do you mean found nothing? Can you explain more about that?
They found no they couldn't do anything with the DNA
well, because all they could do at that point, I think what you're saying is all that they could do at that point was to compare it to the National CODIS database.
I don't know if they even had enough to identify the DNA. They had such a minuscule amount that I'm not convinced that it wasn't consumed in the testing, because the testing consumes a large part of the sample, and it was the tiniest sample.
And I never heard it was like the tiniest sample. I mean, obviously it's small because it's DNA, but
it was like the smallest amount that you could possibly.
Where'd you hear that from?
Use. The whole thing with that back of the snap, the little hole in the back.
Yeah, but I mean, because DNA is found on the back of the snap, why does it mean that it's the smallest, most minuscule amount?
No, they said that it was a super, super minute amount. Okay, but also the porousness of the leather would have held DNA.
We're not scientists. I mean, we're kind of postulating here, but
I do have the guy that I live with that I run this stuff by, and that's how I know that testing consumes the sample.
Like right.
When you do a test,
so what? I mean, I don't understand why that. I guess I don't understand.
Well, they said they barely had enough of a sample to test. They tested it, couldn't.
I still don't know who said that, but okay, go ahead.
They couldn't make heads or tails in the Idaho lab. Plus, you got to remember the guy who took the knife into evidence, that Idaho State Highway Patrol trooper, that was the same one that should have been on an administrative leave for the whole thing with the chiropractic doctors over in Bloomsbury. I mean, that whole process with that DNA was crazy. There was so much crazy stuff. Like, I mean, it's just like all flooding back, like how, like, why would they allow Kohberger to take 6 weeks where he could have cleaned his car before they gained access to it?
Well, because they didn't know. They truly didn't know what like they didn't. They honed
in on him pretty quick. They said that they honed in on him pretty quick, but then they also had the owner of the residence, the 1122 King Road. That owner lived in Loma, Colorado, which is a town of no more than 2,000 people. And for some reason, Bryan Kohberger drove through that town on his way to Pennsylvania. And that was where.
How do we know that?
This was in the FBI files. The FBI lost track of him when he left his apartment.
Yeah, but it doesn't. Okay, all right. He went through
Colorado. Track of him for 13 hours. And right.
Okay, I remember. That's right.
They only were able to track him because of a license plate reader in Loma, Colorado. It was so bizarre. Then you had the whole car accident with the other white Elantra in Oregon. I mean, it was just freaking nuts. There were too many weird things. And I really want to mention Kopaka, Brent Kopaka, and that whole SWAT team incident that just so happened to be on the same day that they pulled him over twice in Indiana. Like No. And then all the people that were in the SWAT team there with that incident, it was the people that some of the officers from Moscow PD, some of the officers from Wazoo, and some of the officers from Pullman. And the man who,
well, I mean, all surrounding law enforcement agency, it was a big deal. It was a SWAT situation.
Of course, but it's just a little too freaking cozy. And then the one who had the kill shot, I'm forgetting his name right now, but he was a sergeant with Wazoo. And I've just got to say that Kohberger working at Wazoo, they had full access to his DNA at his workplace, whether they ever hired him at the Pullman PD or not. But I still think they hired him at the Pullman PD.
Okay.
I do.
All right. Well,
I mean, seriously, like they've never said who took who.
I know, but we don't need to. I know you and I have talked about this before, but the police department doesn't have any obligation to us to tell us who they hired or why they didn't hire someone. In fact, under like HR provisions, they're not legally allowed to do that.
No, when they're public servants, they're public servants.
Okay, so
the position is a public position. And
but maybe they did announce it, but they didn't say this is a position Bryan Kohberger applied for.
No, what they said, bottom line with Kohberger's employment with Pullman, yay or nay, what happened after the interview? What was it, like April of 2022? I think it was April 12th. What happened after that? He was one of 4 finalists, and they claim that they have no record of what happened after that, which is completely asinine.
What? Who claims that?
Pullman PD.
Where do they claim that? I don't know. I don't know about all this stuff. Where do they claim that?
The Pullman PD, if you ask them, did they hire Kohberger or not, they say that they have no information.
No, they say that they basically say no comment. I mean, I know because I've gone over. Okay, maybe, but I guess
they say they have no information, and the thing is of course they have information. Of course they do.
Well, so, I know, but still, they don't have any obligation to tell us about it. In fact, I think they'd be inclined not to. I mean, why? Because you're asking. I'm going to tell you about hiring decisions.
Well, like I said, police departments are public service.
They are, but it doesn't mean that they have like an obligation to ask to answer any question from any.
No, personnel files are absolutely confidential, but personnel files are confidential. Personnel issues are confidential, but whether someone's hired or released, that's public information.
Right, but whether they're not hired, if somebody's not hired, they don't have any obligation to tell us anything about that.
Well, they never said who filled that position. They never said.
They have to say that. Maybe the position wasn't filled. Maybe they decided.
No, I had somebody come in my chat, Kelly. I had some weirdo come into my chat.
Yeah, some weirdo come into your chat.
I say Dawn Daniels and Victoria somebody split the position, that it was a 40-hour position, and Dawn Daniels took that 20 hours, and Victoria, I forget the last name. And I knew exactly who Dawn Daniels was. She was the sergeant who was filling in for the police chief, the assistant chief, and the captain, who were all on administrative leave from Wazoo. And she's now the assistant police chief. When they transferred Jenkins, or when Jenkins retired and then they hired him, then they promoted Dawn Daniels. But for a few months, she did all 4 jobs. She did sergeant, captain.
Okay, what about, who is this person? I'm like getting.
Dawn Daniels is a full-time employee.
So how's she related to what you're saying there?
Because they were saying that she took that position that Kohberger interviewed for, that she was given half of the position. She was given 20 hours.
I mean, do you know that this was the person you were talking to? Did you get her identification when she came into your chat? I mean,
no, but I knew who Dawn Daniels was. And then I looked up who Victoria was. Victoria was somebody who worked in the administration.
Well, maybe they just be playing you because they know that people talk about this case like crazy. And I mean, they could have been any like toothless crackhead sitting behind. Like,
Right. But I mean, it was just funny because I just happened to know exactly who Dawn Daniels was. And they were arguing with me on the live in the chat, claiming that, you know, she took this halftime position. I'm like, how on earth could she take that halftime position for Pullman PD when she's full-time with Wazoo PD? Plus, the Pullman PD position was for a student. It was a fellowship position, like an internship.
Right.
It wasn't for a professional.
Okay. All right. I'm going to get back to, I can only remember what, Angel, do you remember what your question was about, like how they identified his car or whatever? Because I just pulled up the PCA. I'm not Angel, Ara. I'm sorry.
No, I'm here.
Okay, go ahead, sweetie. Go ahead, Ara. She was there for a minute.
No, it's because Daniel put on Alexa. So and then she was talking, so I didn't want to interrupt. And then if I say that word out loud, everyone else is Alexa.
Yes, I know.
Okay.
They're all like, yes.
Yes. So no, I was listening to the conversation between Miss Justice and you, and also understanding that Miss Justice is a panel guest. So you asked for people to come up and have a conversation. So I'm really interested in what you guys are talking about. I know Miss Justice also has done her research and knows some stuff that I don't know.
Yeah.
So
yes, she does. You know, yes.
But I do. Does. But I do want to. I want to. The question that Angel asked about. I'm trying to get back to where you were, what you were talking about as well. I missed it.
So I think it was about the evidence. If not for the DNA, what evidence would there be?
Right.
So,
correct.
You know, the one thing that they had was and I don't mean to cut the conversation we're having, but I want to get back to this question too, because I know that people are interested in this, like motion to suppress the person, whatever, all this stuff. So related to that. So what the PCA says is, whoops, I just had it. Let me bring it into the stream. Okay. So what the PCA has, and honestly, I haven't been talking about this case. I knew all this stuff like the back of my hand not too long ago, but we haven't been talking about this case so much recently. So like to try to remember these details and like claim that, oh yeah, I got it right. I don't want to do that. So I just want to read it straight from what the PCA says, and you can all take it for what it's worth. So on November 25th, 2022, Moscow Police Department asked law enforcement agencies to be on the lookout for a white Hyundai Elantra in the area. So that's on November 25th. So that is 12 days after the tragedy happened. On November 29th, at approximately a certain time, Washington State University police officer queried white Elantras that are registered to WSU. As a result of that query, let me just make sure I put myself in full screen. Okay, good, because I don't want to do that. As a result of that query, he located a 2015 white Hyundai Elantra with a Pennsylvania license plate of Bryan Kohberger's. The vehicle was registered to Kohberger at his address. That same date, approximately 12:58, Washington State University officer was looking for a white Hyundai Elantra, and it was in the Pullman parking lot by his house. Officer Whitman also ran the car and it returned to Kohberger with a Washington tag. I reviewed Kohberger's Washington State driver's license information and photographed the license indicates Kohberger is a white male, 6 foot, 185 pounds. Additionally, the photograph of Kohberger shows that he has bushy eyebrows. There we go with the eyebrows, the famous eyebrows. Kohberger's physical description is consistent with the description of the male that Dylan Mortensen saw inside the King Road residence. So, I mean, that is a connection. And I mean, I will admit on its own, that connection it's weak at best, you know, on its own without the IGG support, for obtaining all of the rest of the evidence that they did, the whole fruit of the poisonous tree issue. I do believe certainly that would be too weak. Now, somebody in chat mentioned the fact that, let's see, I can't remember if this is before, after. Nope, it's after. That Bryan Kohberger, and again, I don't remember the exact details, changed his registration, shortly. Let's see. Like right around the time that the crime was occurred.
I think it was 6 days later, if I'm remembering right.
Was it? Yeah, very possible. That sounds like it could be totally right. I truly
which just sounds so insane for somebody to go commit a crime with out of state tags. I mean, not just out of state, but from the East Coast. But the other thing that I was remembering as you were talking is that freaking DoorDash delivery that they say happened at about 4 a.m. That has always bothered me so much. That's in the PCA. I think they use the word around or about, one of those.
Okay.
4 a.m. Why not say the exact minute to the second? Because it's DoorDash. They're going to have that. They're going to know. They're going to know if it was 3:59. They're going to know if it was 4:01. That's the one thing they're going to know for sure. So that's always bothered me a lot.
Yeah. Okay. So it says, what it says here is, okay. So everybody was asleep in their rooms at the residence by approximately 4 a.m. This is with the exception of Kernodle, who received a DoorDash order at the residence at approximately 4 a.m. Law enforcement identified the DoorDash delivery driver who reported this information. Yeah, so that's what it says about that. So what do you think about that, Ara, with, the other evidence that would be, connecting Kohberger that would be completely independent of the, and what do you think about that, of the IgG DNA connection is basically the license plate and the white Hyundai Elantra?
Well, I have several opinions on that, but again, I'm not a law enforcement person or whatever, but the way that I see it, if the defense throws out this DNA stuff, then I think they're going to have to start all over in the whole canvassing of vehicles, because the Elantra was not the only thing that was driving around at that time. It's a college town. I'm sure there were other cars.
The Elantra that was found, like, I think it's like, the way they put it together, it's the Elantra that was found repeatedly on a number of different cameras at the time, that at the time that put it there at the time of the murders, basically.
Right. What time was the murders again? Do you remember the time?
So the PCA gives it a range, and I think it is from, let's see, I want to be exact here, so hold it. Just one second. It's on the next page here. Something about 4:20. Okay, so all right. Dylan Mortensen stated she originally went to sleep in her bedroom on the southeast side of at 4 a.m. She heard these things. Kernodle was on TikTok at 4:12. Dylan looked out of her room. Okay, at approximately 4:17, a security camera located at 1112 King Road, residence immediately northwest, picked up a distorted audio of what sounded like a whimper or a thud. A dog can be heard barking numerous times, starting at 4:17 a.m. The security camera is less than 50 feet from Xana's wall. Dylan Mortensen stated she was in the front door on after the third time. She heard crying and saw a figure clad in black clothing and a mask covered the person's mouth and was walking towards her. Dylan described him the way she did. She was frozen in shock phase. Okay, here we go. So the combination of Dylan Mortensen's statements to law enforcement, the reviews of forensic downloads of records from Bethany and Dylan's phones, and video of the suspect is described below, leads the investigators believe the homicides occurred between 4 a.m. and 4:25 a.m.
And the DoorDash was 4:17?
No, it was approximately 4 a.m. And part of this that you need to take into account, as I've told you before, that I learned from the two guys that I'm in contact with the University of Idaho, is Bethany Funk seeing a person of that same description outside her bedroom door very shortly after Dylan saw him inside the house. And that is all part of the information that allowed them to narrow down this time frame.
Right. And so it's not like
you guys.
The Elantra wasn't the only car driving around. It was also the DoorDash car driving around. I'm sure there were other DoorDashes. I mean,
yeah, but it was like the way that the white Hyundai Elantra circled the residence. Remember, it did like 5 passes.
Yeah. I remember.
Yeah. I mean, I just think that there wasn't any other car that was acting suspect like that, and that, was, parked for a certain amount of time. That happens to be right after the time when Dylan saw this person inside the house. Bethany saw the same description person outside the house. They talked on the phone with one another.
I do not disagree with you. I do not disagree with you at all. What I'm asking you is, these other possibilities, right? Because I'm trying to get the timeline straight. So it's from 4 to 4:25 is when these murders would have occurred, and then you have the DoorDash around 4 a.m. So 4 a.m. there was still a car driving around, aside from the Elantra, right? And then so I'm just thinking, I'm wondering, they honed in on crime, Bryan Kohberger, so early, so they were only looking for this Elantra. So were they or were they not looking at other cameras, and looking at traffic besides just around? Do you see what I'm saying? Like once they've decided they found their person, then that's all they looked at.
Well,
I guess I'm talking in the
Can
sense
I-
of like a
can I
defense
hop
attorney at
in?
this point.
Let me answer that question directly, then you can say what you can hop in. So the first mentioning, and the PCA at least, of making any connection towards Bryan Kohberger with a car is on November 25th. So again, that's 12 days after the crime. And I just have to imagine, and I believe that all of those different, law enforcement agencies were looking into every piece of data and information they could, literally around the clock, times many different, personnel for those.
But remember, it was the gas station person that allegedly saw the Elantra. That was what tipped it in that direction.
Right.
Was somebody working in the middle of the night, bored, looking at their surveillance.
So was it the gas station person or law enforcement that honed in on the Elantra first, or was it the gas station person that first cited it?
It was the gas station person. It wasn't any of those. The gas station person was a part of it. Law enforcement reviewing security camera footage was a part of it. And
did the gas station person know that a white Elantra was being searched?
No,
and that's why he took the video.
That was before the white. What's that?
Well, because when that video came out of the white Elantra, he's talking about it. He's like, "Oh, there's this white Elantra this time, blah blah blah," and it came out.
And
right,
it was
on
driving
the internet.
fast. It was driving fast.
Was it before? Oh, okay.
Okay. So let me tell you, the bolo for the white Elantra. Let's see. Hold it. I've got to refresh my memory. Okay. On November. Okay. So it was on November 25th when the bolo went out. So that is when they started talking about the white Hyundai Elantra, and as Justice A through Z just said, that was in part due to the report from the gas station attendant.
So this random gas station, he just saw a white car drive by real fast, and
right,
he could
exactly.
slow it down and make it seem like an Elantra, and just assume it's an Elantra.
Well, no, he didn't assume it was an Elantra. Then they went back and checked security camera footage.
Then they had the FBI expert nail it down to the wrong year. Remember that?
That's right.
They had their guy with 35 years experience.
See, that's what I was confused about. Was it the gas station person, or was it law enforcement that made the white Elantra important?
Everybody was on. We're in Moscow, Idaho. Very small community. People are freaked the fuck out. Everybody's on alert. Gas station attendant happened to be reviewing some of their security camera footage. They saw, or I think that was it. They saw this. They reported it to the police. The police therefore started reviewing security camera footage. Was able to eventually narrow it down to believing it was a white Hyundai Elantra. They started to look at. They were already looking at other security camera footage. They spotted other locations. They were looking at security camera footage right near the house. They spotted it there. They spotted it doing the 5 or 6 passes by the house right at the time when the murders occurred, based on all this other information they had, including eyewitness testimony and cell phone records. So that's how that all happened.
Can we talk about how they changed the time frame from that it happened between 3 a.m. to 4 a.m. to then coming out with the PCA, where everything starts at exactly around about 4 a.m.
Yeah.
But you have that freaking body cam video of the law enforcement interacting with those 3 guys, looking directly at the property at 3:01. And yeah, there's so much traffic and there's so much activity. It's a freaking party town. And you got to remember that it was the night of their rival school was UC Davis, who had come and played, and they got their butts beat. And UC Davis, they had already played there at Davis. And the night that they played at Davis, there was somebody that got injured by a sharp object. I just think that's another very weird thing. And never, ever, ever in this entire case do they say anybody was or wasn't at the freaking football game. I want to know what time that football game was too.
So, also quick question. The DoorDash was delivered, right? It was delivered. And then someone had to open the door to put it inside the house?
I'd imagine.
Well, so, and that was still in that 17 minutes of the murders being occurred?
I don't know. All we have is approximately 4 a.m. and
Well, the DoorDash
time
was
frame.
approximately 4, and then the murders happened between 4 and 4:25. And that DoorDash didn't stay outside, because if you didn't get up to get it, then it's going to stay on your front porch. The guy is going to walk
Xana
into
was
your
awake.
house.
We know that because she was on TikTok at 4:12.
So everyone was awake during these murders, pretty much.
Well, I think Dylan was awoken, and I think Xana was awake. And I mean, we know that Kaylee and Maddie were murdered in their sleep.
But the DoorDash was inside the house. So within minutes, somebody just broke in. I mean, I'm just, for a long time, I thought that whoever this DoorDash person was had something to do with this. I don't know why I thought that. I'm not saying that's true. Please do not take what I say for anything. But it's just the coincidence and like the timing of it all is a little weird. I don't know.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, but it can't get inside your house unless you open the door and put it inside your house. And why not eat it as soon as it gets there? Right? It would have been in the trash or something. I don't know. I order DoorDash all the time.
All we know
That's
is
why I'm saying.
DoorDash packaging with Xana's name on it was found in a picture through the window into the kitchen.
Inside.
And we don't know if it was from that night. We don't know. Maybe she did eat it or not. Maybe it was in her bedroom. I mean, maybe she did eat it a second.
Well, it was in the kitchen. It was in
but
the
maybe
kitchen.
She orders DoorDash every day. I mean, sometimes I do.
But it's not going to get into your house unless you open the door and bring it in.
Of course. I mean, unless somebody threw it in through the window.
Well, right.
But I'm sure.
I'm not trying to argue with you, Ms. Kelly. I'm trying to have a nice little talk with you.
No, I know, but so yeah, okay. So somebody opened the door to get the DoorDash.
Right. Well, I'm just trying to imagine the scenario, I guess, of that night. Like somebody ordered it, somebody had to open the door, just open the door, put it inside, and then not eat it, just leave it in the kitchen. But you're right. Do we know if it's from that night? We don't know.
Yeah. And also, I mean, it looked to be eaten for me. But here, wait, let me just answer the question because I'm trying to answer these questions too. So we were talking about the gas station attendant and how that all went down. So I found that. So let me just read you what it said there because I see a lot of people in chatters saying various things. So this is what, the official word is. Take it out for whatever you take it for. Detectives collected 8 hours of surveillance video Tuesday morning from a gas station in Moscow where a clerk saw a white sedan passed by at 3:45 a.m. So this is part of the creation of the timeline. And this is dated on December 13th, 2022. All right. Okay, so where a clerk saw a sedan passing at 3:45 a.m. on the night of the unsolved stabbing deaths of 4 University of Idaho students, according to store worker. An overnight assistant told Fox Digital that she had been reviewing tapes a little bit at a time over the past few days, looking for clues in her downtime on the graveyard shift. She said she was not working on the night of the murders. All right, hold it. Let me scroll down if I can. Come on. Monday night, she said she reached the 3 o'clock hour and spotted the car. She said she took a picture of the screen and sent it to an email address the police set up to receive tips. Sorry, this is one of these sites that's really like bitchy. It wants you to keep just going to the ads. Hold it. Sorry. Come on. I don't want your goddamn ads. Don't you hate that? Okay. So I had, whoops. Okay. I had a weird feeling to go get on the camera, she said, asking that her name not be publicized out of safety concerns as the suspect remains at large. Let me try to scroll down again. Come on, baby.
Kelly, I sent you a link in the private chat about, and I just looked it up right now. It's from Law and Crime, and it's from the person that delivered the DoorDash, and they made a statement. I gave you the link.
Okay.
If you want to
Awesome.
take a look
Thank
at it
you.
later.
Yeah, I'll definitely play it. So that's basically how it went down. So go ahead and chat about that for a second. I'm going to go grab Ara's link. Go at it,
What do you
girls.
think, Miss Justice? What do you think, Miss
What do you think,
Justice,
Miss
about the
Justice?
DoorDash thing?
Miss
Is
Justice?
she there?
What do you mean? What do I think about the DoorDash thing?
Well, I mean, I don't know, like your opinion on, do you think it was delivered that night, or?
I think they're being shady by saying that they're approximating what time it was delivered. Because if it was delivered at exactly 4 a.m., they could say it was delivered exactly at 4 a.m. because the person that delivered it is going to put it on the door, on the stoop, take a photograph of it, and keep that record. So I just think they're being shady. And I think that they changed.
But it was from that night. It was from that night.
Right. But they changed.
It was definitely from that night.
They changed the time frame. Prior to the PCA being released, the murders happened between 3 and 4 a.m., according to Chief Smallfry, who...
Well, the affidavit was 4 to 4:20 something, right? It
Right,
was
right.
Not even 4:17. It was 17 minutes.
That's what I mean. They had changed it. They had already said that everything was done. It was a done deal before 4 a.m. It all happened between 3 and 4.
Well, that's what I asked Ms. Kelly. What time did these murders happen?
Right. The first thing you do if you're trying to, confuse, the first thing you do in a crime is you throw off the timeline. First thing.
But it's in the affidavit. And then somebody said that it was like a woman. No, it wasn't. It's a man. A man.
No, but I mean, they changed. The law enforcement said it happened between 3 and 4 until the PCA came out, and then everything started at exactly 4. So it took it to a different time frame.
Look, the driver says, and if Kelly brings up the article that I sent her.
Wait, I have it up. Hold it. I'm just trying to. The driver. All I see here is the driver says that she was sad. He or she was sad. Here, hold it.
Well, at the bottom it says, "I was surprised but exceptionally glad that some form of resolution is forming."
Yeah.
It's like such a weird statement, but yeah, right? But the way that he says it, I don't know. But you know how I am. With statements, just especially with like Nicole Kessinger, and it's a man. It says it in the article that it's a man.
Does it? I don't see that. I just see him saying the driver.
Yeah, if you scroll down after the 19-page document paragraph, or it says actually there, the man who did not want his name used.
Oh, okay. Let's see.
It says the man.
Oh yeah. Wait. And a man saying something. Where?
Above the 19-page article, go up one paragraph. The man
who did not want his name read the affidavit. Okay, let's see. Hold it. I have to. Oh yeah. So yes, according to this, it does say it's a man. So yep. I know. I think I know that there were channels reporting it was a woman, and I personally believe that was because of the people, certain channels wanted to drive the narrative that it was Emma, what the frick is her face, because that is like super scandalous. But I don't think there was ever any real evidence that it was a woman. So the fact that it's a man makes sense to me. But yeah.
Well, it says it's a man, and it's honestly, logically, I don't see a woman doing DoorDash at 4 a.m. I don't think that's something that most women would feel comfortable doing in a college town either way. It just makes sense to me that it's a man. I also don't see why they would say the man if it was a woman, but, and it says personal driver because they don't want to say Uber or DoorDash or whatever. It's just a private driver.
Oh, wait, hold it. I'm sorry. Here, listen, I'm pretty sure what they're talking about here was the driver that dropped Kaylee and Maddie off. I'm pretty sure that's what they're talking about. Hold it. Let me.
Okay. So that's not the food guy.
Kaylee and Maddie. Yeah, this is not the DoorDash driver. The person who dropped Kaylee and Maddie off was a recruit or a pledge of one of the fraternities at the University of Idaho. And one of the things they did was act as designated drivers for the guys in that fraternity and their girlfriends and their friends and things like that.
Oh,
So
okay.
that's
I apologize for my misunderstanding. I
that's
apologize.
okay. That's all
That's
right.
my bad. That's my bad.
No, that's fine. I mean, that's
Totally my bad.
fine. But I mean, initially it was. I know even. Oh my God, the guy that reports on MSNBC.
Yeah,
He reported so much on this case. I can't think of the guy's name. I'm like, my brain is dying right now.
that was my bad. Chat, don't come after me.
It's okay, but he even said that it was an Uber driver, but it was not.
Mhm.
I'm 100% sure I've confirmed with the people that know the victims and go to that is who it was. It was a fraternity pledge. Just to put a
Please be gentle while you guys take me to the cross right now.
No, it's fine. No,
sorry.
that's totally fine. I mean, there was really two drivers involved. It was the driver who dropped off Kelly and Maddie, and there's a DoorDash driver. Easy to make. Like, I totally get why that would get you confused.
No, I kind of just jumped on the gun on that one.
That's okay.
Thank you for being kind, Miss Kelly.
Yeah, no, that's like no.
Oh
big
yeah,
deal.
but so then underneath it says the affidavit also stated a DoorDash driver had delivered food to Cornudo at 4 a.m. and that she was active on TikTok at 4:12 during the time the murders are believed to have occurred. So okay, these articles are difficult to read.
Yeah. Oh, I know they are. I know, and it's one of those sites too where they try to drive the ad so it jumps around. I would totally read. I could read something like that wrong easily, no problem.
So then the DoorDash thing did happen while TikTok was going on, and the murders.
Well, it says the DoorDash is Justice A through Z rightfully pointed out in the affidavit. It says approximately 4 a.m. See, I never thought that was any kind of issue, but maybe it is. And they know specifically, and it says in the PCA that Xana was on TikTok at 4:12 because, of course, they examined all of the phone data, so they know that for certain. So, the really sad thing about that to me that just really hit me when I read it, and every time I read it, is that we know that while initially, Kathy Mamba reported, that everybody was sleeping. I mean, we know that Xana was not, and we now know that that really just wasn't the case. That she's just kind of full of shit and incorrectness all around.
So then that private driver says he felt guilt because he had driven Mogan and Gonzalez home that night at 1:56 a.m. only to learn days later they had been killed. He questioned whether he had been followed or if he should have done something differently. Mm-hmm. He said that he had driven Mogan, Gonzalez, and Cornudo many times. Mm-hmm. Cornudo, Mogan, oh yeah. So this guy, this private driver, had driven them many, many times, and then he feels bad that maybe.
Like I said, he was a fraternity pledge of one of the fraternities that I've been asked to not disclose. I know exactly who the person is. He was a pledge of one of the fraternities that one of the female roommates had a boyfriend in. So that was a connection.
I wish I knew who this private driver was because I'm sorry, but he does not seem like legit to me. I feel like that's bad. Well, because he's driven these people many times and then he just felt bad about what happened.
They were murdered. I mean, of course he feels bad.
I don't know. I'm just feeling.
I have a feeling it's suspicious, but I mean, I think anybody would feel bad. So, this person, I mean, just imagine being in that situation. This person is certainly, I'm sure, thought about it many times that he, other than the people in that house who were all murdered savagely that night, was other than the killer and the other victims, was the last person to see those two girls alive. Of course, he's going to have feelings about that. Is how I look at it.
But what he said, I'm hoping to have an ironclad place. Like after I've become like, I don't know what the word, Kelly, maybe you can help me because this is your specialty. When you just kind of feel like you can't trust anybody anymore. And some people that seem genuine, like Chris Watts, when he's like, oh, I hope they find my wife and I love her and I wish they were here. Now I'm just starting to, like this driver saying what he's saying. Now I'm feeling what I felt when Chris Watts said what he said about his wife. I hope they come home and I miss them. Like it just, I don't know how to explain it, Kelly.
Yeah, but I guess the thing I'd say about that is from just reading this one sentence in this article, whereas with Chris Watts, we had that whole 13-minute video of him like laughing and smiling and snarking.
Yeah, you're right.
Saying he wants his family to come home. I mean, you can certainly feel how you want about it, but I mean,
no, that's true. Cynical is the word I'm looking for. Yes, thank you.
cynical,
Yeah, that's true.
Anyway, I was wondering if you meant that he was being a little contrite with saying that he felt bad. Like that would completely freak your shite out, you know?
Yeah.
Like, I mean, you'd be devastated.
Yeah. Wait, just 1 second. I'm going to be gone for like 20 seconds.
But that's one of the things, that's another thing that's never sat well for me with this case, is that the Moscow PD knew that house and those girls pretty well. And they never expressed anything about that. Like, oh man, we were just here a couple of weeks ago for one of their noise complaints. Plus all those noise complaints, to me, it seems like they were harassing those girls. They were going to that house. Remember that one night when Payne went and was talking to Xana, but he wanted to see Maddie. He's like, where's Megan? I want to see Megan. Does Megan live here? And Xana's like, I don't have a Megan. Oh, Maddie. You remember that one?
Yeah.
That was crazy.
And I hope that no one thinks that I'm trying to I'm trying to assume BK's innocence. I'm not really. I can't assume either way. I can't assume he's guilty and I can't assume he's not guilty because I see this channel as like a discussion forum more than a matter of fact forum. So I apologize if my opinions or what I discuss or whatever it seems biased or not. I'm just.
No,
you know how I am, Miss Kelly. I just
your opinion can be your opinion. We can have discussions, but make no mistake about it. This channel is about facts. Like
you're really good, critical thinker.
I'm just thinking out loud, I guess.
And Kelly, you know I love you, my dear, but we had a bit of a falling out a long time ago over this case. And I just want to throw back at you when you were asking me about the troll in my chat saying that they knew that Dawn Daniels and Victoria were given that position. You don't really know these frat boys and what their motive is.
No, I don't. But it's not that they were just in my chat one time. It's that I have been talking with them and I have verified them and I have vetted them with their.
Right, but they're very invested in selling you a story, is what I'm saying.
Ever since 2 days after this, and certainly you can say that, and some people certainly believe that. But I trust my own judgment and discernment, and most of all, I trust the identity check that my dad did when he was still alive because he's an attorney and he could do that with their government issued IDs. And then
that's badass. That is badass.
Yeah, I taught because like when I say I vet people, it's not like some other channels vet people. Like I found a Facebook page that has that name. Like I vet them,
Right, but if the fraternities and the law enforcement is a part of this, then of course the frat boys are going to be selling their stories on YouTube. In my humble opinion,
they're going to be telling their stories on YouTube, but I mean, I guess in
my humble opinion, I'm just extremely skeptical of the frat boys. I'm extremely skeptical of everybody in this case because there's so much crap that doesn't add up. I
just don't trust college kids. Period.
Oh my god! And then they go and knock the place down. Are you freaking kidding me?
But I do trust Kelly. Like Kelly wouldn't put that out. I don't think if she didn't do what she needed to do to vet it.
I did what I needed to do. I mean,
but it's hard. But it is hard if you're not the one that is having to vet it to question it. I get that, and
and
I definitely don't trust frat boys. No offense.
I mean, I normally wouldn't either, but I mean, these people. I mean, I don't know how many hours I've talked to them. I've talked to their family members. I've talked to one of the victims' family members, and I mean, just. Over the past several years, I've gotten to know these people. So I could say, generally speaking, I don't trust frat boys, but like these people to me now they aren't, frat boys anymore. They're grown adults who are doing different things. And, but just because somebody is a member of a fraternity, it doesn't mean that they're a stereotypical frat boy. They're people too. So that's how I base, my discernment of who I'm going to trust or not.
Also, the way that you make content around these people is totally different than another, like maybe any other channel that I've seen to make content. They're like, oh, exclusive interview, like, and then here and then blah blah. You have to pay to see it. Like, you're not putting their faces or their names or like monetizing those interviews. You're just like, look, this is what I got from these people. You can trust me or not, but you're not making a whole like zoo spectacle out of it, which is the only reason why I believe you.
Well, and when it started to become a zoo spectacle, I immediately stopped talking about it because I'm not gonna do that. That's not, like I said, this channel is, it is like discussion is great, and I want to have conversations, and speculating is fine when you make it clear that you're theorizing and speculating.
Right.
But it has always been, this is a fact-based channel, and that is why I, even in discussions, and I want you guys to express your opinions and say what you think and stuff. But when it comes down to it, I just have to make sure that because it's my channel, that people are watching it are clear on what it is that we know are the actual facts as far as we can tell. And yes, sometimes that is as presented by law enforcement, and sometimes I don't trust law enforcement either. Look at the Delphi case, but that's a whole nother story, or the judicial system. But as far as we can humanly tell, I have to let people who watch this channel know these are the facts and these other things aren't the facts. That's why Justice A through Z, I was pressing you on like the sources for things, because that my channel is all about presenting the facts as facts, and anything.
No, and I appreciate that. Absolutely. I'm just talking off of memory from 2 years ago when it happened, and
right.
But yeah, I try not to say anything that I'm not sure of, or if I am just sketchy on it, I'll say I'm sketchy on it. But yeah, I did a ton of digging on this whole thing. What was the kid's name who drowned in the inch of water like 9 months before?
I don't even know about that.
His first name or his last name was London. He was also a Sigma Chi pledge. He was tight with Ethan.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and you brought up earlier Emma. What was Emma's last name? She was sketchy AF. Emma and Demetrius Robinson, those two that served up the rugs that
Emma Bailey.
Thank you, Emma Bailey, that killed the other college student,
right?
Caden Young over spring break in Western Washington, in Chehalis or Centralia, Washington. That was weird. And then not only did they arrest them and then cut them loose, they've never rearrested them. That's crazy. That's absolutely crazy.
I want to know who opened the door for the DoorDash driver. That's what I want to know.
Right.
Is that a weird question, Miss Kelly?
Well, I mean, we'd all like to know, but I think things that, a lot of times DoorDash drops off your stuff, takes a picture, they leave, you get the notification. By the time I grab my DoorDash, I don't ever see the driver. So the only
but somebody had to put it inside the house.
I know. So it makes most sense to me that it was Xana, but we don't know that. I mean,
I think that's like a very important thing, because whoever put that food inside was awake and downstairs.
Yeah, and I mean, it makes sense to me. It was Xana, because Xana, we know she was awake at approximately 4 a.m. If approximately 4 a.m. is within 12 minutes, because we know she was on TikTok
at 4:12.
Yeah,
but she passed away at 4:25.
The range that the law enforcement put out is 4 o'clock to 4:25. That's all I know.
That's crazy.
So Hudson Lindau was the student who was found near Sigma Chi. He had rushed with Ethan the year before, so he was found deceased about 6 months prior. So that's really weird to have two Sigma Chi kids that rushed together be deceased.
Yeah.
That's
Okay, hold it. I have to address some things in chat. So like the flex and being, I hear what you're saying, lemon lime. I hear what you're saying. Like, I think these conspiracy theories, with all due respect to my guests, because I love them and they're my friends and I respect their opinions. I definitely differ on this case. I don't like the perpetuation of conspiracy theories having to do with this case. In fact, all I have done in talking about this case is to present facts against them. And that has been my stance all along, because I do think, and I understand when you're saying, and I'm sorry if you feel it's getting disrespectful. I actually don't really want to go any further into conspiracy theories. I mean, I'd love to go on like one of your channels and talk about it with you, but I don't want to. I think just because of the stance that I've had on this case and the position that I promise I'm going to deliver it with this channel, with presenting the facts, we can but at the same time, I don't know, I'm just thinking out loud right now, y'all. The people in chat who are getting disgruntled by it, I am telling you what my position is. I've been having these conversations with Ara, who I respect, and Justice A through Z, who I respect, and they're friends of mine, and we've talked about a number of cases. I don't agree on a lot of things, and I am presenting the other side of it. So, if having that conversation offends you, I am sorry about that. And, sometimes it's too much. You just got to go. I get it. But I like kind of the way the comments are coming off to me is that I am not presenting the factual side of things, but I just want to make it very clear that I am, and that is what this channel is always about. So.
Okay. And you know what, Ms. Kelly, I apologize.
You don't have to apologize. You did nothing wrong.
We are, you go, this is your channel and whatever you say goes. So let's go where you want to go.
It's not like that. It's because of just, I've had this channel for 3.5 years. I've worked, you guys both know, because things that, the general viewer doesn't know about the trials and tribulations of being the creator of this channel, how much I've had to be against and how much I've had to, fight YouTube, fight people, fight families, fight other channels, fight people trying to shut me down, this, that, and the other thing. And, the way that I've always combated that, and, to this day, I've done so successfully, is by, at the end of the day, I always, stand by my promise of presenting the facts as they are. And again, if the facts come out when the trial happens and the defense presents their case, and there is evidence that shows that Bryan Kohberger is not guilty, I have no hesitation saying, oh my God, he's not. If facts come out, eventually, there's evidence that shows that freaking Bailey, I just thought of her last name, I can't remember now. Emma Bailey and, whoever else is guilty, or these frat boys are guilty, I will have to do a huge mea culpa, and I will have absolutely no problem with doing that and talking about it and talking about where things went wrong and how I was misled in this direction, but now the evidence shows. But that hasn't happened yet. So, all I can do is stand by the commitment that I've made with this channel to always present the facts and, stand against the conspiracy theories that are extremely hurtful to the families. Like, big one with that case was that huge conspiracy theory that I now know have completely unequivocally traced back to 2 channels starting, that, that students were aware of this happening in the earlier morning hours before 12 a.m. And there was tons of them. Angel D, you know exactly what I'm talking about. And that simply was not the case. One of the victims' families was so immensely hurt by that. I spoke with these people, I heard them cry, I heard their pain, and I didn't see their tears because I was on the phone. But, I think that really fucking sucks. So I put out the information that I know to be factual that stood against that in support of those families. And I'm always going to do things like that. So, that's just what I do here. And there's nothing to apologize for. Having discussions are great, but it also is just 2 hours now and I have to work in the morning. It's almost 12. So that's just another reason I'm getting really tired.
And I'm fine with everything you've been saying, my dear. I just wanted to bring up, before we wrap up, that photograph from the back of the corner club, the screenshot of the surveillance camera,
right,
with Kaylee and Maddie talking to, I think it's Jack D, and I think it's Chief Small Fry that's standing by the door with Adam and Jack S, I think.
Yeah.
I call him the man. I call him the man without a face, because there's no face.
People say that it is the owner of the club, who does look very much like Chief
I know what the owner of the club looks like. He's a lot younger.
Yeah. So, I mean, I don't know. I don't know who's in that picture. I don't know if the picture is actually legitimate. I don't know. It could have been Photoshopped for all I know. There's
Right.
no way
Well,
for me to verify that picture is authentic or legitimate. If I'm
right. And
able
they
to
definitely
verify it,
obscured the face. The face is 100% obscured.
yeah, and I mean, who knows who did that? Because listen, guys, this case is so controversial and so divisive. There are so many people out there, and I think many of you know this to be true. I know this to be true on a whole different level after talking to those, guys that were in Ethan's fraternity and, doing what I just did, like standing against all of that, false, manufactured narrative that was conjured up exclusively for the purpose of certain channels getting views. And I know that absolutely unequivocally to be true. Like in a whole like different way than I think not everybody, but a lot of people have been exposed to how many people are out there just trying to stir things up in this case for various reasons that have nothing to do with finding the truth. So maybe that picture came from one of them. I don't know. Maybe it is authentic, but I just don't know that. So that's all I can say about the picture. But I mean, the guy does look a little like Chief Fry, and I think, and this is also a subjective opinion situation. I think that the owner of the Corner Club also looks very similar to what Chief Fry's appearance is, so I just wouldn't be able to tell.
I have them side by side in my community feed.
I've seen them side by side. I just think but maybe the pictures. You mean you don't
But
think that they look that
Chief
much
Fry,
alike?
it's the same posture as him. He's standing the exact same way with his thumbs in his pockets, with his ball cap on and his sunglasses. I mean, it's all the exact same.
Yeah.
But also the way you feel about that photograph, and I do think we need to be skeptical of everything. I have never been down with the audio on that footage of the girls walking from the bar to the grub truck.
Yeah.
I don't buy it. I don't buy that that's exactly what they said, that they just happened to mention Adam's name when they were walking by that surveillance that happened to catch them saying that.
Yeah, maybe they didn't. I mean, that, there's no way of verifying that authenticity of that either.
I know. I think this YouTube stuff is tricky, and it's, I can only speak for myself. I'm out to find the truth, and I think there's a lot of catfishing going on. So that's my opinion.
Yeah. Oh, there definitely is. So, all right. Do you have some last words, Ara? Because I do have to go. I'm just getting super tired, and I got to work. I have to be at work in like 7.
I'm just reading your chat, and I at this point I really hope we have another chance to talk about this, because absolutely. I have a lot of questions for you at this point. So it's better if I just end it here.
Absolutely. Well, we just have to end it here because I have to go to sleep because I've got to function in the morning. But I love you guys, and thank you very much for coming on. I do appreciate it because I wanted to have a conversation.
So it was so fun. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you so much. Appreciate it.
I'm going to hop off.
And Justice A through Z has a channel. Justice A through Z also has a channel, and you guys should check it out. They both talk about the Kylie Rodney case and the Watts case and some other cases. So, see, you believe what was real, the audio or the picture, Dr. Vanna? And Dr. Vanna, so nice to see you, by the way. I saw you in chat the other day. I don't remember what case we were talking about then, but I didn't really get a chance to say hi to you properly. So, it's when we were talking about Soto, because it was when Jay was on. Yeah. Yeah. Oh, thanks, Nancy. Nancy says, what a great powerhouse panel. Thank you, Nancy. I'm glad you enjoyed the conversation. Let's see. I'm trying to follow chat, but I'm a little bit lost. Yeah, I tend to think something similar to this. Sandy says to PKC, it was close in timing, but in my opinion, he unalived Kaylee and Maddie quickly because they were asleep. But yeah, I think there's evidence that Kaylee woke up so sadly, right? But I think that I agree with you. And Xana was on her way back to her room with her food. I tend to agree with you on that. Jody's trying to do laundry. Love you, Jody. Thank you for everything. So Connor Connor says they had to clear all the people in their circle and they passed all the tests. Bryan failed. And I agree with that. I mean, at the bottom of the day, I mean, my opinion about this case is certainly no secret. And I agree with that. So, Justice A through Z says, love to be on your panel with Ara. Thank you, Kelly Chat. And thank you as well, my darling. Time for bunnies. Do we need a bunny break? Okay, here. I'll grab a bunny. We'll have a little bunny break, and then I got to peace out. Just 1 second here, okay? We'll get Mr. Squishy. Too bad Stevie's not here. Stevie named him. He's so excited. Come here, Mr. Squishy. Hey, Mr. Squishy, come here. Oh, it's time for your YouTube appearance. Come on, boo-boo. Cheeto baby boo-booch. Oh, Mr. Squishy. I'm coming. Mr. Squishy's coming, more importantly. Oh. Stevie, if you watch this, this is for you. Let me turn my camera on. Here's Mr. Squishy. Ah. Hey, Mr. Squishy. Made by Stevie on YouTube. Oh, hi, sweetheart. He's like, I was just eating my midnight snack, Mama. Well, it is almost midnight, isn't it? Your ears are hot. Are you just hopping around? Yes, absolutely. Piper, Bewitched, won't they be able to tell the order of death by the DNA and the other victim's DNA? Yes. I have heard that they would be able to, and it makes sense that they would be able to. I actually made a video about the order of death, but I'm too tired now to go try to find the link. I'll try to post in the community chat tomorrow, okay? So, oh, good. Artemis Prime feels better. We got a bunny break. This is a good point. Dr. Vana says we all have the same opinion. We should debate the disinformation together. Yeah. Good opinion. Good stuff. Good stuff. Okay, guys. So I am going to go because I have to be up soon. So thank you guys again. Thank you, Justice A through Z, Ara, to all of you. Thank you, moderators. You guys are amazing. Subscribers, members, people just coming by to check out the channel. Go ahead, click subscribe, take a chance. You can always unsubscribe if you end up not liking Mr. Squishy. Everybody likes Mr. Squishy. So remember, life is hard, so be kind to each other. And most of all, be kind to yourself and Mr. Squishy and other animals because they need your kindness and your food. So, all right, guys, everybody have an awesome night, and I'll see you soon. Oh, Friday night, there's going to be a Watts Live, and I also just dropped a Watts video last night, and I've gotten really good feedback about it. I think it's a good one. I spent a lot of time on it. It's like an hour and 40 minutes long, so settle in. Watch it when you're ready to settle in, and I'll see you guys soon. Say bye, Mr. Squishy. Bye, I'm Mr. Squishy. Bye.